Hi, I'm Brian Grant, and you're listening to On Time, the Brian Grant Foundation podcast about living with Parkinson's. If you want to know more about Brian Grant Foundation, go to briangrant.org.
This year, the global PD community will be heading to Spain for the World Parkinson Congress. As we get ready to gather in Barcelona, it's not just interesting, but it's important to learn about the experience of people living with Parkinson's in all parts of the world. Because how this disease is seen and treated, and how the quality of life for those facing this disease is impacted. These things differ depending on where you live. I'm Dr. Sonia Mather, your host for this series of On Time, a Parkinson's podcast. And in this episode, I'm joined by Paqui Ruiz, who lives in Spain. Hello, Paqui.
Hello, Florence. Hello, Paqui.
Paqui, let's start by sharing a little bit about yourself prior to your diagnosis. What was your life like?
No hay problema, Paqui. ¿Nos puedes hablar un poco de tu vida antes del diagnóstico de la enfermedad de Parkinson?
Vale. Antes de la enfermedad de Parkinson, era una mujer normal. Trabajaba en una empresa de automoción. Tengo 4 hijos, estoy casada. Estudiaba a la misma vez que trabajaba. Pintaba porque me encanta pintar cuadros. Escribí. No sé, tenía amigas. Llevaba una vida pues completamente normal, muy familiar.
So before I got diagnosed, I led a perfectly normal life. I worked in the car industry. I had 4 children. I was married. I studied at the same time while I was working. I also painted because I really enjoyed painting. And I led a perfectly normal and regular life with my friends.
That's great to know. I think all of us sort of had that experience, and this sort of comes as a surprise to everyone. Paqui, can you share with us your journey to diagnosis? When were you diagnosed and what were your symptoms at that time?
Creo que todas compartimos en ese sentido un poco la misma experiencia. Ahora, ¿nos podrías hablar un poco del momento del diagnóstico? ¿Cómo fue en tu caso? ¿Nos puedes acompañar un poco por ese proceso?
Sí. Empecé como muchas mujeres con el dolor en el hombro derecho. Me dolía mucho el hombro, y me mandaron un año visitando el traumatólogo. No fue hasta que fue a la consulta de la doctora de familia, que la llamamos aquí en España, que me dijo que fui porque estaba muy cansada, muy agotada, y me dormía en cualquier sitio. Y cuando fui a la consulta les dije: ay, Carmen Rosa, estoy tan cansada que me dejo dormir en cualquier sitio, que no puedo ni escribir. Y va a una letra chiquitita como niña. Y entonces fue cuando ella dijo: ¿cómo? Tengo letra pequeñita como niña. Y fue cuando se levantó de la mesa y me hizo las pruebas clínicas que necesito el Parkinson, mira para aquí, mira para allí, sube, baja. Y con diagnóstico. Bueno, el diagnóstico no. Después me mandó al hospital y estuve 11 días ingresada en el hospital.
So, like many other women, I started experiencing some heavy right shoulder pain, and I went to my specialist. And so in that moment, I started to share my experience with her, and I started telling her that I was beginning to fall asleep very easily, and that I was getting really tired. And I'd also noticed how my hand letter was going, my writing, was getting smaller and smaller. And so that's when my doctor stood up. She was Rosa. She was really stunned by that information, and told me that I should that I should get checked up for Parkinson's. And that's when I got checked up, and then I was taken to the hospital.
How old were you, Paqui, at that time?
48 years old.
48. And when you first started experiencing those symptoms, what did you think that it could possibly be? Did you have any suspicion yourself?
Y cuando empezaste a experimentar estos síntomas, ¿tuviste algún tipo de sospecha a lo que se podía deber?
No. Pensaba, estoy cansada como todas las mujeres. Pensaba.
No, not really. I thought I was just tired like many other women.
Y pensaba, no puedo escribir bien porque estoy todo el día usando el ordenador.
I thought that I couldn't write really well because I was using my computer all the time, and that it was mainly due of that.
Pensaba, tengo otra vez anemia férrica.
I thought, well, I have lack of iron in my blood.
Yes, that's often the experience of many women and people in general that receive that have symptoms that are ultimately diagnosed as Parkinson's disease. It's not always an early journey or an easy journey. What was the experience of receiving your diagnosis like for you?
Esa, como bien has dicho, esa es la experiencia que comparten muchas personas. Cuéntame cómo fue ese momento de recibir la noticia del diagnóstico.
La recibí en el hospital. Estaba en la habitación del hospital. Bueno, ya sabes que tienes Parkinson. Yo lo miré con una cara de incredulidad que él mismo me dijo, bueno, lo mismo que tiene Michael J. Fox. Y mi respuesta fue, sí, pero Michael J. Fox, o sea, no, perdón, ya yo me vi temblando como Michael J. Fox. No supe reaccionar. Entonces, él me dijo, sí, la misma enfermedad que el papá me tiene. Sí, pero el papá tiene dinero, no yo. Ese fue el momento, no tuvo empatía conmigo. Y después ya, al llegar a casa, me dediqué a buscar en Google y fue el mayor error de mi vida. De tal forma que mi cerebro se bloqueó y estuve como 4 meses que no recuerdo absolutamente nada de cómo viví.
So I was at the hospital room, and my neurologist came in and just bluntly told me, announced to me that I had, he said something along the lines of, well, you already know that you have Parkinson's disease, right? And, and so I was completely shocked, utterly shocked by that information, because I felt like there was a really, like there was an utter lack of empathy from my neurologist towards me. And then he told me, well, that's the same disease that the Pope has. And I replied, well, I don't have the money that the Pope has. And so that night when I got home, I looked up on the internet what Parkinson's disease meant. And I think that was the worst mistake that I've ever done in my life. During 4 months, I was really paranoid about the whole situation and the diagnosis.
I'm so sorry, Packy. Unfortunately, that's the experience of a lot of people when they receive their diagnosis. They just don't have the information and the support that they need to actually move forward. And how easy was it for you to find good information? You said you went on the internet and that was the worst experience that you had. When was it that you realized that there was good information and support out there?
Desafortunadamente, Paqui, siento mucho lo siento, que esa haya sido tu experiencia. Y ahora me gustaría saber cuál fue el momento en el que sí que te diste cuenta o empezaste a ver que había un apoyo, que había un seguimiento y que te estabas informando realmente sobre la enfermedad.
Pues mira, todo fue porque buscaba en español mujer y Parkinson y no encontraba información. Entonces buscaba Women and Parkinson y encontré a Heather Kennedy. Y empecé a seguir a Heather Kennedy, a todo lo que decía, lo que hacía, y me sorprendió como una mujer con Parkinson tenía esa energía y esa vitalidad. Y entonces a partir de ahí, pues, visitaba más las páginas de Estados Unidos que las propias de España, porque en España no se hablaba de mujer y Parkinson. No había información de mujer y Parkinson.
And so I started looking up on the internet, Spain and Parkinson, and I couldn't find anything. So that's why I started looking up the websites in other countries. And I found out about Heather Kennedy, and I was utterly surprised about how a woman like her, who's got Parkinson's disease, can also be so energetic. And so that was really the moment in which I started following up on her story and all the information, because I felt like there was another lack of information in Spain. I was obliged to look up the other websites.
That's really interesting because one of the goals of our podcast is to raise awareness of the diversity of people who are living with Parkinson's disease. So what is the public perception or knowledge of Parkinson's disease in Spain?
Es muy interesante lo que me estás comentando, porque el objetivo de este podcast es sensibilizar a la gente sobre la enfermedad de Parkinson. Y ahora lo que me gustaría saber es cuál es la percepción que se tiene de esta enfermedad en España.
Mira, la percepción que se tiene creo que es la misma que se tiene en el resto del mundo, que mayoritariamente le da a hombres blancos, mayores, y que van muy lentos y que pierden. Esa es la percepción. Hasta que no salió mujeres diciendo, yo tengo Parkinson y soy una mujer joven, no se sensibilizaba a la mujer joven. Te puedo decir que en el 2020 hay un estudio de una universidad española, universidad madrileña, que sacó un estudio sobre el Parkinson y no hablan de la mujer con Parkinson. Todo el tiempo el hombre con Parkinson, la mujer cuidadora, pero no dice la mujer con Parkinson, el hombre cuidador, sino todo es referente a- al hombre. Y eso es en el 2020, o sea que está a la vuelta de la esquina.
So it's the same perception that we have across the globe. Whenever we think of Parkinson's, we often think about white old males, and we often think about the trembling and the disorder. But it hasn't. There hasn't been a lot of. There hasn't been done a lot of research on the matter. As a matter of fact, in 2020, there was a study published by a university in Madrid where they talked about Parkinson's disease, but only from the male perspective. Not a single time women were mentioned in this study, and we were often talked about as being the caregivers, but not as being the subjects of this disease. And we're talking about 2020, which has literally just happened.
Right. Does that perception, Paki, make it more difficult for you to talk with people about your diagnosis? How do people react when they learn you have Parkinson's disease?
¿Crees que esto ha influido la manera en la que tú hablas del Parkinson con otras personas?
Sí, creo que sí. Porque para mí me ha hecho ser como reivindicar el papel de la mujer con Parkinson. Una activista, me ha convertido en una activista del Parkinson, si se puede llamar así. Porque hasta que salimos el grupo de mujeres con Parkinson, como con P de Parkinson, no se hablaba de la mujer en España con Parkinson. En las asociaciones casi no había mujeres, sino personas mayores. No había gente joven, no había... mm, Hay carencia de gente joven en las asociaciones, y más de mujeres. No suelen ir a las...
Definitely, this made me become a much more outspoken person when it came to the disease, and it's really turned me into an activist. It wasn't until we created our association Compe de Parkinson's that I started seeing young women with Parkinson attending our meetings. Every time I would show up to one of these associations, there were only old or white males, and that it's really been a turn point in my life.
Speaking of that, your organization that you started, Paki, can you tell us a little bit more about what Compete de Parkinson is all about?
Hablando de esta organización, Paqui, ¿nos puedes hablar un poquito más de Compe de Parkinson, de esta asociación?
Sí. Con P de Parkinson nació en noviembre del 2020. En principio yo abrí un blog y pensando contar mi experiencia con mi padre, pero enseguida no sé por qué, empezaron a escribir otras mujeres, se fueron sumando, hicimos un grupo de 5 mujeres aproximadamente, y un año después ya éramos un movimiento. Al principio la gente era muy susceptible con esas mujeres que estaban saliendo diciendo, tengo Parkinson, mírame, estoy aquí. Después sacar algunas campañas de sensibilización, estuvimos haciendo mucho ruido por todos lados. Mm, Y creamos, a los 2 años ya creamos la asociación y ya fuimos más conocidas, conocimos a los psiquiatras, que fueron para nosotros muy importantes, porque nos abrió una ventana al resto de la comunidad latinoamericana. Conocimos a la fundación de Baby King Foundation, a la de Brian Grant. Estuve un año detrás de Brian Grant para poder entrevistarlo. No sé. En España te puedo decir que el fenómeno de Compere Parkinson, en modestia aparte, ha supuesto una ventana al mundo de las mujeres con Parkinson. porque no habíamos referentes en España de mujeres que hablaran del parto. Tanto es así, que os diré una primicia, de que la Sociedad Española Sociedad Española de Neurología nos ha conseguido el premio por, por ser capaces de dar visibilidad al parque y de sentar en la misma mesa a pacientes, neurólogos e investigadores, y ser un ejemplo de asociación. Para mí eso es el mayor reconocimiento que he podido recibir en mi vida. Me emociono.
And so we started back in, no, I started back in November of 2022. I created my own blog where I shared my experience as a woman, sorry, with Parkinson. And all of a sudden, a lot of women started reaching out to me. And that's how we started our first initial group. There was 5 of us. And then progressively, we started to get a lot of input from a lot more people. And in 2022, we organized awareness campaigns, and that's where we officially founded our organization. We got in contact with associations in Latin America, with other foundations like the David Finney and the Brian Grant Foundation that I'd been dying to get in contact for almost a year, for over a year. And in Spain, not to toot my own horn, but I think that our association has become a window to the world for people who have Parkinson's, and even so that the Spanish Neurology Association has awarded us for being the first the first organization to sit down at the same roundtable, both researchers and patients.
Yes, Packy. I mean, I'm very well aware of your work, and it's been absolutely remarkable in terms of the impact that you've had, especially for women in the Parkinson's community. It's been absolutely wonderful to watch your organization grow, and the impact that it's had is remarkable. I just wanted to step back for 1 second, and because our listeners are often very curious about the care that's received at different parts of the world. I'm wondering about how easy is it for people with Parkinson's to receive care in Spain? Are there enough neurologists? What are the wait times like, and that sort of thing?
Me gustaría ahora hablar del cuidado que están recibiendo las personas que tienen Parkinson en España en cuanto a en términos de listas de espera, términos de cuidado. ¿Cómo están siendo estos procesos para los pacientes que tienen Parkinson?
Sí, verá, en España hay una Federación Española de Parkinson que aglutina a las asociaciones que hay en las provincias españolas. En cada provincia puede haber 1, 2 o 3 asociaciones. Estas asociaciones se dedican al cuidado de personas, principalmente personas mayores, al cuidado en el sentido de darle terapia, apoyo, etc. Para esta persona es fundamental. Pero hay un vacío cuando se trata de las personas con Parkinson de inicio temprano. Y más si se trata de mujeres. No se tiene en cuenta que una persona joven con Parkinson necesita otro tipo de motivación. Yo no me siento mayor para estar sentada con personas de 80 años, con las que sí que podría compartir cosas, experiencias de vida, pero no para llevar terapias conjuntas, porque la diferencia era muy importante. Y porque no me sentí, porque para mí es fundamental el no sentirme enferma. Tengo una enfermedad, pero no soy enferma. Soy una persona con una enfermedad. Eso es principal. Y en España, bueno, pues las listas de espera para operarse, por ejemplo, depende también de la comunidad autónoma a la que pertenezca, porque cada comunidad autónoma tiene sus propios, gestiona sus propios recursos. Entonces, en una comunidad puedes tener una lista de espera de 1 año y en otra de 6 meses. Lo que sí tenemos bueno en España es que la medicación es gratuita.
So we have to take into consideration that in Spain, there's a Spanish organization for people with Parkinson's that englobes all the regional associations. And so they are the ones in charge to provide care and support and therapy, but especially of old people. So what I'm seeing here is a lack of care, especially when it comes to young young people with Parkinson's disease. I could be sitting in the same group with people who are 80 years old, but the thing is that I don't share the same life experience. I could share some of my life experiences with them, but I don't feel like I'm old enough to be sitting down at the same table with patients that are this old, and I don't feel like we should be organizing group therapies when there is such a decalage when it comes to the ages. I think that I am I don't see myself as being a sick person. I am a person who suffers or who has an illness, but I'm not a sick person. It doesn't define me. And when it comes to the waiting lines in Spain to get surgery, it really depends to the regional government. Because in Spain, every regional government deals with their resources, and so it can take between 6 months up to 1 year. It really depends on the way they handle things at the different governments. But what I will say is that we get free medication here because of the public health care.
That's really important because a lot of places in the world, the price of medication can really be an immense burden for patients. How often, Paqui, are you able to see your neurologist or your movement disorder specialist?
Eso es muy importante lo que se comenta respecto a la medicación, porque en otras regiones no es una situación tan ideal. Ahora me gustaría saber, Paqui, ¿con qué frecuencia ves tú a tu neurólogo o neuróloga?
Bien, he tenido la suerte de que participaba en un proyecto, del proyecto POPADI, un proyecto a nivel europeo. Entonces, gracias a ese proyecto, me veía 2 veces al año. Cada 6 meses tenía consulta con él, que en una era la consulta como paciente y en otra me hacía la consulta como participante de un estudio. Y eso ha sido durante los últimos 6 años. Lo normal es que te vean cada 8 meses.
So in my case, I've been lucky enough to participate in a European project that treats people with Parkinson's. And thanks to this experience, I've been able to see my neurologist 2 times a year. So that means one time every 6 months. I would come in his office one time being considered a patient, and the other time being considered as a participant of this project. And that's been going on for the past 6 years. However, in most cases, in another scenario, we would be talking about seeing your neurologist every 8 months.
That's very interesting. It's similar to Canada, actually, where I'm from. But most of our listeners actually live in the United States, and many people in the US pay for their health care. How does that compare to healthcare in Spain? You mentioned the medications are free. Is seeing your physician free as well?
Eso es muy interesante, es parecido a la situación que tenemos aquí en Canadá, donde yo soy. Sin embargo, la gran parte de nuestros oyentes son de Estados Unidos y seguramente se estén preguntando cómo se puede comparar la situación a la de Estados Unidos respecto, por ejemplo, a los médicos de cabecera. ¿Se pagan en España?
No. En España la sanidad es un derecho constitucional, es gratuito y es público. No pagamos medicamentos. Cuando eres pensionista, como es mi caso, por una enfermedad crónica, no pago los medicamentos. Y si no es una enfermedad crónica, pues pagas un porcentaje muy pequeño del medicamento. Yo seré operada del DBS en un futuro muy próximo, tampoco lo pagaré la operación. Me pueden ingresar pues por una infección de orina y tampoco pagaré por estar hospitalizada.
And so in Spain, as I was mentioning, healthcare is free, so you don't pay for anything. It's a constitutional right. So that means that you don't have to pay for your visits to the doctors, you don't pay for your medication. And in my case, because I am someone who's retired and who has a chronic illness, I don't have to pay for any of my drugs. And in case you don't have a chronic illness, you only get to pay a very small percentage of the actual cost. And also, I'd like to mention that I'll be getting the DBS procedure soon, and I won't be paying for that either.
That's wonderful. That's very supportive government in terms of chronic illness. It's really good to hear. Paqui, you are obviously a very strong advocate, and your efforts are globally known, actually, not just within Spain. But what do you hope to achieve through your efforts?
Me alegra mucho oír algo así, Paqui. La verdad es que eres una activista conocida ya no solo a nivel nacional, sino en el panorama internacional. Cuéntanos qué esperas conseguir con tus esfuerzos.
Mira, sobre todo hay tres cosas que me preocupan mucho. Uno es el que se sigue investigando en la mujer. Creemos que espérate, para que lo digamos bien. Entrevistamos a un científico que nos dijo: la ciencia y la medicina le deben siglos de investigación a la mujer. Y yo me quedé con esa frase. Entonces, nosotros usamos, igual que Soania, que Katrina, que un montón de mujeres, que se investigue en la mujer. Es fundamental que se investigue en la mujer en cualquier enfermedad. Y ese es uno de nuestros mayores objetivos. Pero luego también está algo que nos preocupa mucho es la situación de los países latinoamericanos, la falta de medicación. Me entristece enormemente recibir comunicados de mujeres diciéndome: no puedo comprar la medicación, no llega la medicación a mi país. Eso me parece tristísimo. Y ahí creo que hay una lucha enorme. Y qué más, agradecerles el apoyo que he recibido también por parte de las mujeres como Soania, como Michelle, Flanagan, como Didi. No sé, hay tantas mujeres, Heather, que han sido para mí un ejemplo de activista. Y ese ejemplo es lo que yo he intentado hacer aquí en España. No soy más que una de ellas.
So there are things that I'd like to highlight during for this part. And the first place is that one of my main goals is that we continue to do research when it comes to women and women in Parkinson's. We interviewed recently a scientist who said that science and medicine owe centuries of research to women, and I would really like to stress that sentence because it really stuck with me and resonated with me. And I'm just another example of another activist, but you, Sonia, and Katrina, that you've been there since the start, and you've also achieved a lot of great things. So for me, it is key that we continue to do research in this area. In the second place, I'd like to highlight the current situation of Latin American countries. There is a great lack of medication. I get a lot of messages from women telling me that I can't afford to buy these drugs. And it's so sad to me. And I think this is a big fight that we still have to keep up. And in the third place, I'd like to mention other women that just like me are trying to do their best. Women like Michelle or Sonia or Heather. There are so many of them. I'm just you guys are another example of what I'm trying to achieve here in Spain.
I couldn't agree more with the importance of research for women with Parkinson's, as well as the medication equity piece. I fully support what you're saying. I think it's so vital. As we come to sort of an end of our time together, Paqui, if I could ask you one last question. If you could make one change for women living with Parkinson's in Spain, what would it be?
Aquí no podría estar más de acuerdo en lo que me acabas de comentar respecto a la equidad de los tratamientos y de la medicación para la mujer y de la necesidad de que se continúe haciendo investigación para mujeres con Parkinson. Ahora que nos acercamos al final de esta entrevista, me gustaría preguntarte si hay un cambio que pudieses hacer instantáneamente ahora para las mujeres que viven con Parkinson, ¿cuál sería?
Un cambio en que hemos conseguido que los neurólogos le digan a sus pacientes mujeres: mira, hay una página web, mejor dicho, donde puedes donde puedes encontrar referencias de otras mujeres. Eso ha sido un logro importante para nosotros y ser reconocida por la sociedad tanto de neurólogos como la de los investigadores.
What I would like to change is that that neurologists would be able to share with their patients that, hey, there's this website called and then this organization called Compede Parkinson where women are sharing their experiences and they're coming forward and they're telling what their symptoms are, and that would be a milestone for us.
Paqui, thank you so much for all your advocacy work and also for taking the time to share your story with us. To our listeners, it's important to learn about the life experiences that others in our global Parkinson's community have. It gives us an understanding of not only the impact that this neurological disorder has in terms of disability, but it also puts into perspective our own challenges, and perhaps also where we may be able to help others in our community by advocating for change. Because really, where you live shouldn't dictate the care you receive. Until next time, wishing you the best day possible. Thank you so much for joining us and hope to see you again as we continue to explore the global Parkinson's experience.
Hi, this is Katrina Call, Executive Director of the Brian Grant Foundation. Thank you for listening to our podcast, which is one of our many programs to help empower people impacted by Parkinson's disease to lead active and fulfilling lives. Our programs are possible because of the generous support of our donors. Please consider helping us continue this work by making a donation at briangrant.org. Thanks again for listening.
The Brian Grant Foundation empowers people impacted by Parkinson's to lead active and fulfilling lives. Help support our efforts at briangrant.org. A special thank you to Raphael Sadiq for providing the music for this podcast. This podcast is produced by Brian Griggs. Learn more at griggsproductions.com.